Thank you very much. Should I move to a corded mic, or we're good to go? We're good to go. All right. Well, hey, it's my great honor to welcome here this morning and to be the first person to, actually come to think of it, I think John might have wished you a Happy New Year. I know Andrew did, and Sonia did, and I think actually even that movie beat me to it. So it's my great privilege to be the fifth person to wish you a Happy New Year. No, but you know what? Seriously, it is my great privilege to be here this morning. And as I've come in and talked to people, I've had a ton of people come up and just say, hey, can I pray for you this morning? I'm so excited that you're sharing God's word with us, and I just want to pray for you. And I'm very blessed by that. So thank you very much for you, for my church family. I feel like I'm part of a family that loves me. And that's a great privilege for me. And this is a combined service, as you know, so there are going to be some kids wandering around the back. If you are parents and you have kids around, they're not going to bug me, okay? I'm the parent of twins. I know about distractions, so it's good to go. Be comfortable. Just have a seat. We've spent a fair amount of time over the last couple of weeks remembering. And even Ray and Tampa up here this morning did a little bit of remembering about what happened at the New Year's service. Remembering is important. But it's often something that we forget to do. And when I was in high school, I took a couple missions trips to Cuba, and it's not all fun in the sun, okay? Those of you, the youth who are going down to the DR, okay, some of you have been before, you know it's not all fun in the sun. Sometimes you actually have to do some work. And we did some work. We did a week of work, and we did spend the last day at the beach, which was nice. It was great. But we were flying out that evening as well. So we spent the day at the beach after a week of work, and then we were tired, we were sandy, we were sunstroked somewhat, and then we had this 5-hour flight. So I got up to the guy at the customs line, and I stood there, and I felt good to be back in my homeland, and he goes, the first question he asked, when were you born? And I go, okay, yeah, no, I know that one. I was born January, February, March. No, it's none of those. Oh, my goodness. And no word of a lie. I was lost for over a minute. I just stood there, and I could feel my face grow red and red and red and red. And he didn't say a thing. He just stood and watched as I was just mortified in front of him. I'm back in the country, so I did finally remember my birthday. Okay, that's the good news. But it took me it was one of the most embarrassing stories of not remembering something that I can possibly imagine. Sometimes not remembering can get us in trouble. It's so vital that we remember. And as I already mentioned, fortunately we have been doing that as a church, and I think we do that we do a pretty good job of that as we move along over the course of the year. But last week we had a wonderful service, and people got up and shared their stories. And they told us what God was doing in their life. And they remembered it. They put it back together. Every Sunday we have at the back, I don't think it's out this Sunday, but over the course of the year we have communion. We have the bread and the juice, and you can take that. And you can remember the most important thing, that Christ died for you, that he was buried, but that he was resurrected. And that whole thing was to pay for my sins so that we could have a restored relationship with God the Father. We have to remember that. We also hear each other's stories. People get up all the time and share their stories, and I love them. I love hearing that. We have to keep those things fresh in our mind. But at the beginning of the new year, as much as it is important to remember, it's also important to do a little strategizing, to do a little forward thinking. What do we want this year to look like? What do we want 2016 to look like? How do we want to see God move in our lives over the course of this year? And so this morning, I'd like to share with you 4 New Year's resolutions that I think each and every one of us should take a look at and consider for this new year. So where do we get this great wisdom? These resolutions that I think everybody should perhaps think about. Well, the Bible has 5 books, and it's right around the middle of the Bible, and they're called the wisdom books. So that's where we get wisdom. There's a lot of really good wisdom in there. One of them is called Ecclesiastes, and it's not one that we hear about often because it can be sometimes difficult to understand. It can be tricky, but there's some good stuff in there. and we would do well to look at it this morning. It's written from the perspective of someone who refers to himself or herself only as the teacher. They had a life of luxury, and they claimed to hold the office of King of Jerusalem. It's clear that they've lived in wealth because they can speak to that. But they've tried their hand at many different ways of living, including pleasure-seeking, knowledge-seeking. They've poured themselves into their work, maybe even, threatened becoming called a workaholic. They've striven for advancement, and they've achieved great wealth. They've done all of these things. And now, at the end of their life, after trying it all, we get to hear their wisdom. Okay, are you ready for it? This is good stuff. Okay, seriously, are you guys ready for it? Okay, some people over here are ready for it. I'm not sure about you folks over here, but we're going to go on anyway. Chapter 1, verse 2. Ready? Meaningless, says the teacher. Utter meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Okay, so I think this verse speaks for itself. If the worship team will come forward now and lead us in some upbeat worship music. No? Okay, obviously not. Meaningless, everything is meaningless. I mean, is this really in the Bible? This sounds something more like a 20th century French philosopher would say, there is no meaning to life. Yes, that's my best French accent. It's terrible. I gotta watch some more Ratatouille or something. Is that what the teacher is saying? Does our life have no meaning? Does it have no purpose? Well, I'll tell you this. The teacher uses this word over about 30 times in the book of Ecclesiastes, and it's only written 62 times in the Bible as a whole. So half of its references are in this book. If we don't quite understand what he's talking about, what she's talking about, I think we've missed the point of the book. So let's seriously consider it. The NIV translates this word as meaningless, but it's actually a Hebrew word, and it's hevel. That's the word. It can also be translated as vanity or futility, and some of the older Bible translations translate it that way. It literally means a vapor or a puff of breath. It's something that's very short-lived and therefore not very significant. The key is its impermanence. It's fleeting, somewhat useless, short-lived, poof, and it's gone. Okay, phew. So it turns out our life doesn't have any purpose, but it's extremely short and kind of fleeting. Is that helpful for us to hear? Well, it's terribly helpful for us to hear if it's the truth. We humans have a tendency to have a false confidence when it comes to our own mortality. Life, as we know it, in these bodies and on this earth, it's not long. Regarding our own mortality, the teacher writes the following: "It is better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting, for death is the destiny of everyone. The living should take this to heart." These aren't exactly joyful words, are they? But does it give us a right perspective? And that's the key here. The key is a proper perspective. That's what I would like to suggest should be our first New Year's resolution, that we have the right perspective and that we keep the end in mind. We have a unique ability to do this. We as human beings, we're able to think about the future. We're able to think both the long-term, or the short-term rather, and the long-term future. The teacher writes the following: "God has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end." Okay, so granted, we can't get the whole scope of history. We can't understand God's great and mighty plan, but he has set eternity in our hearts. In some way, we can think about it. In some way, we can allow it to change our perspective. This is the same challenge that the Apostle Paul gave to the followers of Jesus Christ in the early church in Corinth. Only Paul takes it a step further. He doesn't just challenge people to think about the fact that our life here on earth is short-lived, but he says there's something more to come. He challenges the believers to think about eternity. He writes the following: "Listen, I tell you a mystery. We will not all sleep, but we will be changed in a flash, in a twinkling of an eye at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, The dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed. For the perishable must clothe itself with the imperishable, and the mortal with immortality. The point is that the life that we experience here on earth must be seen as impermanent, as but a puff of breath, if we're to truly grasp, if we're to at all comprehend the permanence of the life that is to come. As I was thinking about this, literally sitting on the bed, putting my thoughts together on this point, Sarah was sitting beside me, and she was on Facebook, and she was watching a little video clip of the preacher Francis Chan. And he was sharing a teaching aid that I thought was so impactful and so helpful that I said, you know what, thank you, Francis Chan. I'm going to steal that from you. I'm going to use it here this morning. So we got a rope. This rope represents our life. This spot here that's got black tape on it, this is the life that we experience here on earth. That's it. That's what we got. The rest of it, it goes on. I don't know, can anyone tell me where this rope goes? It's here. We've got some pointing, comes around here. Oh, some pointing, definitely, yeah. And out that door. And you have to take me in good faith that rope goes on to eternity once it leaves that door, okay? Nobody look. But it keeps going. Short, impermanent. And yet, how often do we get caught up in this little bit of rope here? How often do we think about this? We don't think about the rest of that rope. Paul goes on. He goes on to talk about the strategy that he uses, and one that we would do well to use to stop just thinking about this little part of the rope. Paul says the following: do you not know that in a race, all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer just beating the air. No, I strike a blow at my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. Paul says, I'm going to take this seriously. I'm not just going to think casually about the rest of the rope and focus all my time on this little short bit of the rope. No, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's not always going to be easy, but every minute of every hour of every day, I'm going to focus. I'm going to keep my eyes on this. On this. So should we. It impacts everything we do. How we spend our time, for example. I mean, it's great to rest, to restore, but if we're spending all of our time on activities that don't count for this, it's a waste of time. How about the way we spend our money? Yeah, it's wonderful. It's a reward from God to have things that we can enjoy, that we can eat, drink, but you know what? If we're spending all of our money on ourselves, if we're not thinking of others, if we're not giving of this money that God has given us to help in the kingdom, we're not investing in this part. We're just putting money into this little short part. How about those taps on the shoulders? And Ray and Tampa, I loved your story. Thank you for sharing that. They got these taps. And Tampa said she didn't say anything, which is unlike her, but I know that you've said things in the past in the timely, appropriate ways, and you've spoken wisdom into your parents' life. How difficult that must be to tell your parents that maybe they're not doing something wrong in their life. But you guys have risen to the challenge. You've responded to those taps on the shoulders. The taps on the shoulders are an investment in this. Even though they may cost us in this, they're an investment in this. I mean, just think about it. When we're young, as kids, this is where we are right here, first couple of years of our life. And we're thinking the long picture is Saturday morning cartoons, right? Yes. I think maybe even we'll get back to that. Over here, okay, youth. You guys, you want to be done school, okay? Hey, maybe you want to get your driver. Imagine the freedom when you get your driver's license. It's going to be awesome, okay? And it's pretty cool. But you've got to think past that. Those of us who are here in our career age, we're thinking about advancement. We're thinking about all the stuff that we can buy. Maybe some of us are also thinking about Saturday morning cartoons and sleeping in. The kids can watch those. Awesome. We get towards the end of that black part of the rope. We're thinking about retirement. We're thinking about, finishing our life well. We're thinking more about investments. And that's great. But all of those things, if they don't invest, if they don't think about this, we're wasting our time. That's exactly what the author, the teacher, is trying to tell us. The black part of that rope is short. And Paul wants to remind us, hey, we got to invest in that rest of that rope. If you this morning don't hear any more of this message, I challenge you, please take this part to heart. Take it home with you. Start to think about how you can invest in the long part of the rope. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you don't listen to the rest of the messages because I got 3 more, okay? We've got 3 more to cover here, so let's move on. The second thing that I'd like to suggest as a New Year's resolution is that we think before we speak. I've never really had a problem speaking. Sometimes that's got me into trouble. Sometimes it's been a wonderful gift. But our words are powerful. And just this weekend, I was reminded of that fact. I went to a family reunion, and my aunt told me about a cousin who's now in college. She has a beautiful voice. She says she sounds like Sarah McLachlan, just this wonderful voice, but she never sings. And when she was a kid, she had somebody in her class come up to her. She was just singing away, and this person said, "You have an awful voice." And she's never been able to sing since. Words are powerful. As kids, kids say mean things, right? I'm not faulting the child. But as adults, we don't really have an excuse. We need to think before we speak. Listen to what the teacher says about speaking. The more the words, the less the meaning. And how does that profit anyone? Now, I would go on a lengthy discourse about what that verse means, but I'll move on. Fools are consumed by their own lips, and fools multiply words. God is in heaven, you are on earth, so yet let your words be few. We live in an age of technology, and that can be great. When we want to communicate something, we can write it down. We can look at it, we can edit it, we can re-edit it, we can think about what we're going to send, and then we can send it. Or sometimes we can write a text and send it before we even realize what we're doing. So even in this age of technology, when we have the ability to think more about our words, we don't always use it, do we? These sentiments, being careful with our words, is also echoed in the New Testament by the biblical author James. He says the following, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." Okay, wait. Isn't this really just good advice for extroverts? Aren't they the ones that kind of just spout off their mouth? The introverts, they're fine, they're okay. They just don't say anything at all, right? All right, fair point. What about the people who never say anything at all? Surely the best thing to do, right, is just never speak. Then you're not going to say something you regret. Well, here's the thing. The teacher usually juxtaposes the speech of fools with the speech of those who are wise. This is what he says about timely and appropriate speech. Words from the mouth of the wise are gracious. The quiet words of the wise are more to be heeded than the shouts of a ruler of fools. I'm not convinced that it's just right to never say anything at all. Often appropriate words, spoken at just the right time, is what's needed. Here's the point. The more you listen, the more you stop to consider, the more likely you will be able to speak something meaningful into somebody's life. Think before you speak, but please don't be afraid to speak. You may be surprised at how God will use that at just the right time. All right, second one down. We're going to move on to the third New Year's resolution that we should all consider, and that is find something that you enjoy and do it. Ecclesiastes is a reflection on life as a whole. But much of the reflection in the book is given to our job, our vocation, our work. And I guess that makes sense, right? Because we're probably going to spend about 1/3 of our adult hours, of our adult life in this thing, in this career, this job, this work. So it's a big part of our life. The teacher tells us that we really need to find satisfaction in our work. They say the following: I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is a gift of God. Now, you can tell from my physique that I've taken some of those words seriously. I have enjoyed eating and drinking, and it's wonderful, but sometimes I have not always drawn satisfaction from my work. He also says this: so I saw that there is nothing better for a person than to enjoy their work, because that is their lot in life. If we're not taking pleasure from what we do, from our work, then the teacher says that in some way we're doing something wrong. The ability to enjoy our work is a gift from God. Do we have to absolutely enjoy every aspect of our job? No, of course not. But the point is that if we're not working in some way and it's not filling us back up in some way, we're going to wear ourselves out pretty quick. We need to find satisfaction in our work, or else, quite frankly, we're ripping ourselves off. Now, fortunately for you this morning, I remembered to bring a plastic wand from my daughter's magic kit. She assures me it's very powerful. And I was going to wave this wand over each and every one of you so that you would enjoy your work this morning, but there's more of you than I expected there would be. I'm not sure it's quite powerful enough for that. But here's the deal. If you want to talk to me after the service, I'd love to talk with you. I'd love to pray with you. In the meantime, I want to share 4 pieces of advice that might help us enjoy our workplace more in 2016. So let's move on to those. The first is to ask God to enjoy your job. The Bible is full of verses that say, ask God, ask me. The Bible tells us that God is a good father who loves to give good gifts. And the writer of Ecclesiastes says that enjoying your work is a gift from God. So why not ask? Makes sense, right? All right, so that's the first one, easy. Second one, change your perspective. Instead of reporting to your boss, report to God. Paul tells us this in the book of Colossians: whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. So instead of seeing that sour woman who's giving you orders, or that terribly unhappy man who's causing misery in your life, instead of seeing them as your boss, see God as your boss. Work each and every day to please Him. All right, fair enough. Point 3, now this is where it may get a little tricky. Pray for your boss. That sour man, that angry woman, maybe you can actually start praying for them. And man, last week we heard a testimony that spoke exactly to this, didn't we? If you guys missed it, I'm pretty sure we can find it online. Check it out there. But that's exactly what happened. Prayer can change things. And who knows, but that God will actually give you something to say in time, once you've thought about it, to that sour man, to that angry woman, that will change their life. And it'll make your workplace so much better. Pray for your boss. All right, the fourth one, and here's where things get really scary. Maybe this is the year to look for something new. Why not explore? If we really take that verse in Colossians seriously, if God is our employer, if we look for a new job, all we're doing is kind of shifting responsibilities under the same employer, right? The point is, don't be afraid. Maybe this is the year to check something out. Maybe this is the year to try your hand at going back to college, trying something new. I don't know. I'm not telling you to go out and make radical life decisions just for the fun of it. What I am telling you is, don't be afraid. If you do decide to move forward, it's the Lord you serve. He'll take care of you. Maybe this is the year to try something new. So speaking of exploring, we've talked about, hey, Maybe you need to find something that you enjoy and do it. The fourth New Year's resolution is based on the exploration of the book as a whole. So right from the start, the author of Ecclesiastes told us that they were on a mission. This is what they said. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. We've already talked about the fact that they clearly established the short part of the rope. We're but a vapor here on earth. So what can we do that's meaningful in these few days of our lives? How does it end? What does the teacher find? I mean, what is good for people to do in the few days of their lives? After all this exploration, after trying their hand at really every kind of living, after exploring meaning, even meaninglessness, the teacher writes the following. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. The fourth resolution is to fear God and obey his commands. Now, I think I've got some time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to list every command in the Bible, and I think that'll help you guys to fulfill... No, I'm not going to go there. I think this kind of speaks for itself. If you come around Church on the Rock long enough, you'll see what we're talking about. You'll hear Dave preaching and sharing from his heart, and he talks a lot about respecting God, that deep respect that is translated here as fear. He talks about obedience, how we can live our lives rightly in light of that. What I want to look at this morning is something that I find very interesting, that after considering all of this meaninglessness, after considering that our life is but a vapor, wouldn't it be kind of easy for the author of Ecclesiastes to kind of fall into this slump of despair and say that actually there's no meaning to life. There's no point. We should all just make up our own meaning. You know, life is short, party hard, eat, drink, and marry for tomorrow, be merry for tomorrow we die. But they don't do that. Instead, they reaffirm that the greatest good for humans is to avoid trying to create our own meaning, our own significance, but instead trust that it's God that knows best. He knows best for us because he's the one who has given this life to us. The teacher says the following, I know that it will go better with those who fear God, with those who are reverent before him. Wouldn't it be nice if in 2016 our life just went better? I mean, hey, wouldn't that be awesome? Here's how it happens. This is how the teacher says our life goes better. When we fear God, when we're reverent before him, when we obey his commands. Next week, Dave is going to be speaking about why we do this crazy thing called church. Why do we come here on a Sunday morning? Why do we sit? Why do we stand? Why do we sing? Why do we do this? A part of it, and I hope I'm not stealing too much of his thunder, is, like we said from the beginning, it's to remember, to put back together the important things in life, to remember what counts the most, like having the right perspective by keeping the end in mind, like being careful with our words, like finding something that we enjoy in doing it. Church challenges us not to be afraid, but rather to get out there, to enjoy life, and to respect God and to obey his commands. I'd like to finish this morning by giving everybody a chance to ask God what you think God is placing on your heart this morning. Perhaps it's something that you've heard this morning in the message, or who knows, maybe even the singing. I wrote it down. I love the one line from that song. It says, there is no shame in looking like a fool when I let go of what I can't keep to take a hold of you. That's exactly what we're talking about here. The world can think we're foolish when we stop focusing so much on this little short part of the rope, when we don't necessarily go crazy about our retirement portfolio, when we don't have the coolest new gadget, when we're not driving the latest vehicle. What are you doing? Don't you have a great job? Can't you afford those things? They might think you're a fool. But what we know is that It's the opposite of fool, who doesn't focus on this, but instead chooses to invest in this. I think I'm going on this about this particular point this morning because this is, I know, when I've been putting together this message, this is what God said, that's your problem. You're focusing too much on this. And there's some great stuff in here, don't get me wrong. You know, I'm right now I'm thinking about investments and, I'm going to put together a good investment. Am I investing in this? Or am I investing in this? That's what I need to consider. So once again, I'm going to give us some time, just 1 minute, to stop and to think about that, to ask God, pray. Ask God to set something on your heart. Maybe he already has, I don't know. I think hopefully most of you got a handout when you came in this morning. There's a little spot at the bottom, just to fill in the answer. So we're going to go quiet for a short time. And if something does come to mind, I encourage you to put it down there. It's a lot easier to remember when you've written something down. All right, so 1 minute. Go. This activity of talking to God, asking things from him, it really is for those who believe in God, who are following him. For those of you here this morning who are on your way to God, I kind of forgot to tell you, you don't have to do it. But if you did it, awesome. Hopefully you heard something. As the worship team comes up now and as we conclude our service, I just want to say this. If you have thought about that, and if maybe something is stirred in your heart and you want to talk about it further, or you want somebody to come alongside you in prayer, the prayer corner at the back of the service there is open. And either during worship or after, there'd be somebody there who would love to just sit, to talk with you, to pray with you, whatever you need. So please feel free to take advantage of that. And my final last-ditch effort to speak to you, please remember what went down on that piece of paper. May 2016 be a year of rich blessing as you pursue God with all your strength, all your heart, all your mind. Remember the long part of the rope. Follow, fear God, and obey his commands. Let's commit this time to the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for being here this morning. I thank you for your blessings, which are new every morning, and therefore they're new every year. This is the start of something new. Thank you for what you do in us each and every day, Lord. You have set eternity in our hearts. We can understand that. We can know that. And more than that, Lord, you promise to be faithful to us, to be with us, to journey with us in this life that we have. Even if on earth it's short, you're going to be with us for all eternity, Lord. Help us to fall on our face in thanks, in adoration. Help us to worship you. Even this morning, Lord, as we go to you in prayer, as we go to you in worship and in song, place a new, fresh spirit in us, Lord, spirit of hope, that this year will be a year that we can grow in you. Thank you, Lord, for what you will do here this morning. In Christ's name.